Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the photo of the week on the Daily Critique. This week's photo of the week is a powerful portrait created by Eric, who's an intermediate photographer from New York. This is going to be a two-part photo of the week video. There are two different things I want to talk about in an effort to keep our videos at 10 minutes or shorter. I'm going to split these two concepts in half. In this first video, I want to just talk about the backstory surrounding this image and give you some conceptual information that might really help you in the area of both portrait photography, formal portraiture, and also the idea of impromptu portraiture. In the second video, I'm going to do the things that we typically do on the Daily Critique. I'm going to give you the technical information about the image, talk about some technique, and then talk specifically about elements and principles of design as it relates to this portrait. Let's talk about some conceptual things, and we're going to use Eric's backstory to do that. I'm going to give you a little bit of my own backstory. My backstory connected to this image is that it came out of a workshop that I taught in the spring where Eric was a participant. It's called the Street Portraiture Workshop, and just real quick, this is a workshop where participants start off working in pairs, working on the basics of portraiture. And after working on some skills in pairs with fellow workshop participants for a couple of days, we then graduate to still working in pairs, the idea of actually approaching people that we're just meeting, that we didn't know before, and then collaborating with them, hopefully, on expressive and dynamic impromptu portraits, or could turn into a formal portrait session, which in some ways is what's happened here. The way that that happened here is that this workshop builds up to or culminates in an assignment where each participant, working with somebody they didn't know before, actually creates a whole portfolio of images, collaborating with one portrait subject. And I'll pick up on Eric's backstory here. He says, this image was part of his portfolio assignment on the Street Portraiture Workshop, and it was his favorite image in his 8-photograph portfolio that he presented on the workshop for review. He says that Chris, his portrait subject here, and he had just met. So before the shoot started, they spent some time getting to know each other before Eric started to shoot. And to me, that is the first of a series of potential very powerful takeaways from this video. If this is work that you would like to do and you would like to get better at, I know for myself that initially doing street portraiture, starting to do this 6 years ago, was a lot about just going past a fear. I knew that I was very afraid to do this, so I started to do it just to take an action step to just get past the fear. Once I did it for even a very little while, then I started to see that, okay, yes, I can do this. I can still myself up to go past the fear. Now, what does this sort of mean? And one of the things that I quickly figured out that this is an area for me as a photographer where the ideas of connection and community, very, very powerful things for us as human beings, have the potential to come into your life in a powerful way, where you take hold of that. You don't just wait for community to happen. You actually establish community at the same time that you're practicing one of your passions. So for me, as a matter of course, doing street portraiture is first about building community. So as a matter of course, I want to get to know people. It's pretty rare that I just approach someone cold and take a few pictures and that's it. I will do that, and that happens from time to time. I use the same approach almost every time. I just say, hi, I would love to take your picture. So much of the time, though, there's more of an organic process where I actually start a conversation with somebody. I'm getting to know them, and then I take the picture. The power of the conversation is that we start to understand people, and when we understand people, then in my opinion, we dramatically increase the odds that we will create portraits that are not only potentially beautiful, but that they have meaning for everybody. And as Eric and Chris talked, one of the things that he found out about Chris is that he's returned to some of the spiritual roots in his life, and part of that involved the practice of meditation. So he says it's become very important recently in his life, again, the idea of meditating. And then that came back into the shoot much later, towards the end of the shoot, in this image. Another thing that he found out about Chris is that he plays the ukulele and sings. Chris had his ukulele, and they started off shooting a whole series of sort of action shots of him playing in a high energy place in Savannah called City Market. But after that, they changed locations. There's another potentially very powerful takeaway from this video. I talked about this in my e-news tip, in our e-newsletter that we sent out in the beginning of the week. I talked about the idea of modulating the energy in a portrait shoot, even if it's short. And Eric has done that here. They go from a bustling place to another location. This place was much more quiet. The quality of light was very different. You had sort of beams of light that were coming through something or structure that was over this area, and because of the quality of light and the quiet, it made Eric go back to the conversation, this idea of meditation and the spiritual side of life. And he ended up asking Chris to meditate. If he hadn't spent the early part of the shoot getting to know Chris, this connection would not have been made. And one of the things that's so true about creativity is that we put ourselves into a situation and we get present and we pay attention, and then those things go in and then they work. And we really don't exactly know how our consciousness is dealing with information and how it can just come back later and combine with something else to create a new thing. But you're seeing that here, and that's another important aspect of this idea of getting to know people. It creates some ideas that are loaded in, and then we do some different things, and all of that forms an alchemy. And the location change is so powerful in so many different ways. It gives both people a break, it modulates the energy, it allows for some gestation, it allows for new ideas to come in. And Eric also talks about that. In addition to changing location, being open to alternate portrait ideas that are different from your preconceptions. And so I want to mention something very practical here that can help with that. To me, a portrait is a collaboration. There's something that you can do that can really hurt the collaboration, in my opinion, in an effort to be collaborative. In my opinion, what you don't want to do to create collaboration is in the very beginning of the shoot, turn to your portrait subject and say, well, I don't know what I want to do. What do you want to do? It's a great way to kill trust. It's also a way to put pressure on your portrait subject that can lock their brain. Maybe they're already a little uncomfortable about this process. And one thing that we have to understand about doing this work is that it's a new experience. It's not like people that we've known for a long time. Too many areas of our life we're just robots and we've tuned out and we're not present. When you're doing this kind of work, particularly people that you're just meeting, it really forces you to totally show up, and that's a high energy endeavor. So we need breaks from that. And the way that I approach the idea of collaboration with portrait subjects is that I would like to have some ideas and start down the road. In that context, if my portrait subject makes a suggestion, then if there's any way at all I can do that thing, then at some point I want to do that. If they don't make a suggestion, then instead of asking them for their ideas, which can put pressure on them, I'll approach it in a totally different way. I might say, in this environment where we are, is there something that you would love to do that would make you feel great? Or I might say, is there somewhere near here that's a place where you love to spend time? Now, this is very, very different. You're going to get an idea from them, but the way that you're asking for the idea is just simply asking them about things that make them feel good. It's a much more powerful way to potentially collaborate. But whatever that thing is that they suggest, even if the place maybe seems impractical at first to get to or to go to, or their idea just seems impossible, and you think that's never going to lead to a good picture, I'd really encourage you to go down the road of honoring that as an alternative. Thing that I want to say here at the end of the video, the huge reason why I continue to make this kind of photography a big part of my life. Eric says that he decided to surprise Chris by sending him a matted and framed print of this image after the workshop because he really felt like it captured an important part of who Chris is. And he says just this week he was really moved to get a message from Chris saying that he's going to present that framed print to his father as a gift for Father's Day. I mean, one of the really powerful things about including this work in your life is that it continues to reverberate in ways that photographing trees and rocks and flowers just can't. I'm not saying those aren't powerful activities for you as a human being, and I still shoot straight landscapes. I'm just saying those subjects cannot create the kind of reverberations that a sentient being can create. And this work has the potential to continue to just give back to you and other people. This now involves Chris's father in a very powerful way, and it just can be a geometry that if you do this work for very long at all, that can be startling, but also it can add a lot of really great feeling and great emotion to your life. You're essentially not just building community for yourself and connections, but helping other people to connect to other people in powerful ways. I want to say a huge thank you to Eric and Chris both for collaborating on this portrait. Looking forward to seeing you in part 2 of this video, where we get very practical and talk about design and technique connected to the camera. Hope to see you again very soon on The Mindful Eye.